Welcome to The Path. This podcast is a production of the men's ministry of First Baptist Church in Hendersonville, Tennessee.
Welcome to the Path Podcast. I'm Jeff Tarkington along with Foster Carney. Today, our guest is Justin Crain. Justin's been a member of First Baptist Hendersonville for a very long time. Foster and I, we talked about him earlier today, and we're both really excited about this podcast episode today. Just going to hear from Justin, hear how God has worked in his life from the time he was a child to now, and how he's helping others, helping other men find their way and leading through Christ and everything. So we're going to go ahead and get started with Justin. Welcome to the podcast.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So it's kind of funny. I was at one of my wife's friends' houses the other day, and we were talking about this, and she knew you and your brother, because I guess you and your brother are about the same age as my wife, and she was talking about y'all in youth group and everything.
Yep.
So they were at a friend of hers, that's Mary O'Neill.
Absolutely.
Yes, so she has a new house. We were over there hanging out.
Yeah, so she was Jerry's age.
Mm-hmm. I know them. I went to high school with them, which I didn't know you went to Hendersonville High School till then.
Right.
So
I did.
We're already starting off with your early high school life then.
That's right.
So I guess you're from Hendersonville?
Yes. Born and raised in Hendersonville. I was actually born at Baptist Hospital in Nashville, and then our first house, growing up, I only lived in two houses. So one was behind Hendersonville Hospital, and then when I was 4, we moved to Indian Lake Peninsula and lived there until my parents moved out of that house just a few years ago. So we've been really local right here in the same place for the whole time.
Well, that's awesome. I had my two oldest children both graduated from Hendersonville High School just a couple years after you. Mm-hmm. So what was life like for you growing up? What were you involved in? What were you involved in sports, or have you always?
I did sports with the city for a little while. We didn't do a whole lot of sports growing up. I say that my life has been somewhat easy, and my until my adult life, Christian walk was easy as well. I was born and raised to go to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. When I was born, my parents were at Two Rivers Baptist Church, and my granddad was a charter member there. And they lived in Donaldson, right close to Two Rivers, and so did that until I was 4. And then at 4, we moved to, we lived in Hendersonville, started going to College Heights Baptist Church in Gallatin. Many of the people that come to church here did go there back in that time, and it's neat to see all the faces that were there that are here now. But that was my life growing up, was College Heights. So I went to school there, even Mother's Day out there. Mary Yarger, who is a member here, was my teacher Mother's Day out when I was at College Heights, and I went from kindergarten all the way to 8th grade to school at College Heights Christian Academy and church as well. So I stayed basically with the same 24 kids from kindergarten to 8th grade. We were all close friends, and because of that atmosphere and what my parents provided me by going to that private school, I just everything was good. I didn't have to face a whole lot of trouble or see a whole lot of things, and it was just a family almost, in school and church.
So you bring up two churches that were Baptist churches, and neither one of them are still that.
Right.
Like Two Rivers is now a Catholic training place,
right?
And that was a huge church,
big time.
And then now College Heights is a non-denominational church, but it's Northfield Church, and our last guest, he's a member there. So that's just kind of funny. The two churches that you had involvement in, they're now something totally different. I actually worked with two people that went to College Heights, and I think you talked about one of them just a minute ago, Jake Myers and Michael Tinker.
Yes.
So it's kind of funny just running into people that went to school there also.
Yeah, so we went to school with them, and my dad did RAs there on Wednesday nights back then, and so they were both in that with me, and so we enjoyed that time.
RAs was I remember doing, church Boy Scouts, doing the RAs and having the vest with all the patches on it and everything, and doing the Pinewood Derby and all that kind of stuff. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Justin, you said something a minute ago that life was pretty good because you were I don't know a better word, but sheltered from a lot of the outside world because you grew up in the. How would you say that affected you as an adult, as far as coming out of the 8th grade, going into high school, kind of exposed to more of secular stuff?
Definitely, I think it was very important because it set that foundation for me for who I am and who I became. And my parents, I think they knew that was important. And my dad, obviously made that sacrifice to put us through private school and keep us there. And well, I know we're going to talk about salvation experience here in a little bit, but I think that everything that I was from the time growing up until I went to high school, public school, prepared me for that. My parents, when we went, and the reason we left College Heights was the school was just to probably get better scholarship opportunities in a public school and a bigger school. If you say you're 4 out of 24, that doesn't look as good as 40 out of 400. However that works. And then my parents, they were like, "Yeah, we're going to leave. You're going to go to Hendersonville," which my older brother had done that same deal, like when he got in 9th grade, and so it wasn't foreign to me, but. They said, and we're going to change churches. And I did not want to do that at all. Josh Gilmore, who's at this church now, obviously was a dear friend of mine there. And I didn't want to leave him or all the people that we were with, but their thought process was, which they were right, of course, was your church friends will become your school friends. If we go to First Baptist Hendersonville, then your friends at Hendersonville High School will be those people. And they were right. I mean, I dove right in First Baptist. It was never a problem. I mean, from day one, they welcomed me and I made good friends there. And those were my core friends through high school, and even to this day, some of them are. And so, I met other people, and I came into situations, where I had to stand up and be who I was at public school. But having that foundation of private school and Christian school up to that point definitely made me who I was in high school.
Yeah, that's good. How long after you left College Heights, your family left College Heights, how much longer was Larry Gilmore the pastor there? He stayed till he retired. I just don't know how long.
Yeah, I'm going to say probably 8 to 10 more years.
Okay.
Because I know he was all the way through our high school and college, so that'd have been 8 years there, and then I think he was 2 to 3 years after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, I mean, I've talked to other people who have gone from small private schools to public schools, and it's almost like a culture shock because it is so different.
Yeah, it's massively different for sure. I mean, like you said, I had 24 in my class at College Heights, had 400 and something at Hendersonville. There's positives and negatives to both. I didn't do sports because I just felt like I was too small or not good enough or hadn't been doing them, my whole life. And me playing basketball at College Heights was different than me trying to play basketball at Hendersonville. Not everybody was that much bigger than me or taller or whatever, or more athletic. So it kept me from doing sports probably, going to public school. But as far as the culture, I think it's just like anything. You can choose to be around the right people, or you can go find the wrong people to be with, And I just knew that wasn't who I wanted to be, so I didn't. I just kind of stayed away from that, and those opportunities. And those things then were totally different, nowhere near as hard as they are now. I think somebody now going from that sheltered or more protected private school to public school would be a lot harder to withstand that temptation or the pressures that come along there.
Yeah.
You talked about you grew up in church. How was that emphasis made through your parents? What was it a choice, or was it hey,
well, it wasn't
church
a choice.
Is open, we're going to be there?
No, it wasn't a choice. They made me go, but it was also by their example for sure. That I followed, and that they told us what we were going to do. They told us what we needed to do, but they also lived it out as well. And that's the biggest advantage that I had growing up for sure, is that my family, there was never any doubt that my parents were Christians and that they loved the Lord and they shared the gospel, and that's what they wanted us to do and be too.
What was that like at home? Did y'all do Bible studies at home, or was it one of those things is kind of known? Yeah,
it was just kind of known. We didn't do a lot of Bible studies at home. My granddad was a pastor. He worked at Lifeway as Baptist Sunday School Board then for a long time, and then he was a pastor at a small church outside of Murfreesboro in Buchanan. It's called New Hope Baptist Church, and so just everything we did revolved around church, and we just knew. And so my grandmother would instill Bible lessons for us and to us, and we went to Vacation Bible School all the time. We did all those things that you do, and we would do Bible studies occasionally, but it wasn't like Thursday night is family Bible night. We're going to go do that, But just the fact that they lived it made it obvious for us. So that's kind of how that was.
So you come here and you're starting a youth group here. Who was the youth minister then? Was it Brady?
Mike Lee. So even before Brady.
Okay.
Yeah. But he was only there for a year or two, and then Brady came in. And Brady, by far, is one of the most influential men I had in my life growing up. And he just set the tone for our youth group as to how we should be, how we were expected to act, and what we should do. And it was almost like, it wasn't that he was telling us, this is how God calls you to be, and I hope you do it. he expected us to do what he said to do and what he taught us to do. Two of the big things that he did were True Love Weights, and that was a huge thing then, and 100%. And I'm not saying I would or wouldn't have had sex before marriage, but I guarantee you he helped me to know not to have sex before marriage, and this is why. And this is the impact that it'll have on your life if you do. And this is what God's plan was, and this is how you should do it. The other thing that he did, and we'll talk about this some more later as far as in relation to men's ministry, but was accountability partners, and just, having somebody there to stand with you, keep you accountable, keep you out of trouble. And if you do fall, say, hey, this is not who we are, and you need to, stop this or change this or whatever it may be. Something that he said that I'll never forget, he would tell us that sin will take you farther than you want to go, keep you longer than you want to stay, and cost you more than you want to pay. And I'll never forget that. Those are some things, but Brady was unapologetic about how he taught and what he expected us to be as youth of First Baptist Church.
So you brought up True Love Weight. So you waited
Yes.
until you were married.
I did.
How did he? That's a hard message to deliver to a teenage guy.
Yeah, and he didn't sugarcoat it at all. I mean, he was. I think sometimes now in the society that we live in, nobody wants to hurt anybody's feelings, and you're worried about what people think, and you kind of dance around it. And he did not. He was very bold in that. This is who we are called to be. This is how God wants us. This is what God's view of marriage is, and you're disrespecting your wife every single time you choose to do that if you don't wait for marriage. And it was never a question. After him doing that series with us, me and a bunch of the friends around me, we just said, we're not going to do it.
That's awesome.
That's good.
Since we're talking about True Love Weights and wait until you got married, when did you meet your wife?
So I met Haley in my junior year of college. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, my junior year. She was a freshman. And so we met actually at one of the meetings that they had for incoming freshmen. She had won an office chair randomly, and one of her friends were pushing her down the hallway, and I got behind her and started pushing her pretty fast and started going downhill. And so I had to run around that chair and stop her before she fell. And she said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Justin Crain." She said, "Well, I'm Haley Crain." So we had the same last name before we got married. And so we met that night, and then a year and a half went by, and we just began talking as friends, playing basketball after some intramural games, and then that led to dating and got married. So
I call her Haley Crain. I have for a long time. I love it.
Where'd y'all go to college?
At Union University.
Okay,
Yeah.
in Jackson?
That's right.
Awesome. So where is she from?
She's from Jackson. She was born and raised there. And so when we got married and got out of school, she didn't. We're skipping a lot. We'll go way back, but when we got married, got out of school, I stayed there and just did some jobs, basically waiting on her to graduate because I wanted to come back here for sure. And she didn't really want to at first, but we did have that conversation before we got married and through our marriage counseling. And I told her, I said, I want to go back home, and I want you to know that, before we get married, and I want to be honest with you in that. And she still didn't want to come, but she was willing to come, And so just in God's timing, He laid the doors open to let that happen, and that was really neat to kind of watch that, because it wasn't really my timing, but His timing, and it's worked out better than I ever could have imagined, for sure.
Did Union being a Christian Baptist university, is that one of the reasons you went there?
Yes, somewhat, yes, but the other thing, my brother went there, so I was familiar with it, but Josh went there, so I was like, yeah, that's good, I'll go there too. And so I didn't apply to any other schools. I just went with him. He and I were roommates, and we had a couple other guys from here that we knew that we started our freshman year, and then he and I stayed roommates the whole time, but the other guys went off, moved in with different people.
What about Haley? Is that one? I know she's from Jackson, where Union is.
I think the same. Her sister went there as well, her older sister, and so it's just, if you're from Jackson, Union is Jackson.
That's about all there is in Jackson.
That's right.
There's a community college there, but
yeah. So Union is very involved in the city there, and is everything about Jackson. And Jackson's grown a ton since we were there, but especially then, if you went to school anywhere around there, that's where you went.
So when you met Haley, and this isn't on the stuff, so I'm hitting you with an off-topic one, but was she a Christian?
Absolutely, yes. So she's been a Christian since childhood too, and so we have a lot of similarities in that, and
other than your last name?
Yeah, in the way that we were raised that way, and she was raised in the same style home that I was, and great parents, and so yeah, she was.
It's funny, man. Me and my wife were driving through Jackson somewhere. We were going to buy a motorcycle, and on the way back home to Gallatin, we hit a snowstorm coming back through Jackson, and I called Justin. I was like, man, doesn't Haley's parents live around here or something? He's like, yeah. So we ended up staying the night with Haley. I don't think we'd ever met him at this point, and just the most hospitable people.
Who is this weird guy showing up at my house right
Who's
now?
this whack job that Justin said it's okay to come stay with us? So anyway, just a little tidbit there.
Well, that was neat.
So let's go back and when did you become a Christian?
So I became a Christian when I was 6 years old, and on the kitchen counter, my mom was on the phone. I could take you to that house and show you exactly where I was, but she was on the phone, and like I said, back at my granddad's church. So that was one of those little country churches little white country church, and I always say they had the big lady playing the piano, and they had the numbers behind the pulpit with
the scoreboard.
Yeah, that's right.
With the Sunday school attendance offering and
exactly.
all that.
So it was that. I mean, you had the sanctuary was tiny, and you had a couple of rooms off each side that were the men's Sunday school class and the women's Sunday school class, and in the back was the children's Sunday school class, and that was it. And when I say children, I mean baby to ninth grade. That was children.
So I think all those churches had that design, because that's basically the design of the church that my grandparents went to in Henry County, Tennessee.
Right.
So I remember those rooms off the side of the sanctuary.
Yeah. So I say that because my granddad baptized me, and so I was 6 years old sitting on that counter. I just knew and felt convicted. And a lot of people talk about, well, when you're that young, can you feel like that conviction? I think yes. So I asked the Lord in my heart on that counter. As soon as my mom got off the phone, I told her what I had done, and she said, "Do you want to do it again?" I said, "No, I'm good. I just did it." And but I went to church the following Sunday with my grandparents at that church, and I remember my grandmother telling the Sunday school class, what I had done, how proud of me that she was, and that kind of thing. And so becoming a Christian at 6, that's what I say. It was kind of easy. From there to ninth grade, you just are a Christian, and you don't really have to make any decisions, or you don't really have to stand against anything. And what you learn is what you learn in church and from your parents and your friends. When I was in ninth grade, here, obviously at First Baptist, I went to summer camp, and that camp was called Where Eagles Fly. And I remember during that summer camp, I don't remember the pastor's name of the camp that came to preach to us, but just in his sermons and listening to his sermons, I realized that I do believe 100% that I'm saved, but I need to rededicate my life. And in ninth grade and in public school, I need to make sure that I do the right thing, make the right calls, and follow Christ, like I know I need to for the rest of my life. So I talked to Steve Mills at the end of a sermon one night, and Steve and I talked, and I got that confidence that, yes, I'm saved, and let's go, let's do this. And so
that's great.
That's kind of that story from beginning to right there.
We talk to so many guys and that get saved at an early age, and at some point, kind of, that high school, college age, they'll have some struggles, they'll drift apart. So far, it doesn't really sound like that was your case. Did you ever have anything like that where, you're out on your own, even though you're going to a Christian university, and, maybe church loses some of that, like, yeah, I'm not going to go this Sunday. I'm going to take a few weeks off or something.
Definitely. I think, and I think a lot of that has to do with who you're around. So I think that in business, in life, in your Christian walk, you're only as good as the people that you're around. And so during college, a little bit more towards the end of high school, and then some in college, there was definitely some people that, I could run with that didn't necessarily do bad things or bring me down, but could have if I let it. And then just didn't have Christ as number one in their life. It wasn't necessarily that they were just doing everything they could to distract me from being a Christian, but that was not their priority. And if that's not their priority, it's easy for it not to be my priority too. I remember I had a specific group of friends in high school and through college, and I'd go to their house, and their big things were working on trucks, or just lifting trucks or doing this or that with trucks and four-wheelers and this and that. And my parents would say, I don't really want you to be over there. And I said, but I'm not doing anything wrong. And they said, well, but you're not doing anything good either, and that was the thing that kind of hit me like, yeah, you're right. I'm not, because nothing that I was doing, even though it wasn't bad, it wasn't glorifying God. It wasn't making me better for sure. If anything, it was probably going to make me worse, make me more lazy, make me, not have goals or ambition, or, and just because I just sat around and didn't, idle hands are not good,
especially in young teenage guys.
Right.
That
Exactly.
is so true.
And so the opportunity with those people and those times to fall away from God would have been easier for sure. God has just always been there for me and given me a strong stance against that kind of stuff. And so I have had temptations for sure. I'm a sinner just like anybody else, and I struggle just like anybody else. But I will for sure say that God's given me the desire and the ability to avoid temptation and distraction in that sense.
That's great.
1 Corinthians 15:33, the end of that passage says, "Bad company corrupts good character." When I was a kid, my mom had that cross stitched and hanging on my wall, and I always remembered, even though if I wasn't participating in what was going on, if I hung around people that weren't walking closely with the Lord, I would start to act like them. Mm-hmm. And so, just what you said, so that's really cool. Yeah.
Used to always hear, guilt by association too.
That's true.
I remember my parents saying that, like, well, if you're around them and they're not doing something, just because you're there with them, you're guilty too.
Yes. Yep, definitely.
I know you mentioned your brother. Do you have this one sibling, or do you have?
No, actually, there's 5 of us.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. So Jeremy is my older brother. He is 47. Jared's my younger brother. He's 41, and then I have a sister that is 34 and 30. And so Jeremy, our older brother, is in pharmacy with Kroger. He's the director of pharmacy for Kroger. Jared, myself, and Brianne run our lawn care business, Crain Company. And then Bethany is in occupational therapy. So 2 of us kind of went in the medical field, and 3 of us are doing landscaping and outdoor living, that kind of stuff.
And all of y'all are very successful too. So,
Thank you.
And
we've been blessed for sure.
Yeah, I've seen Jared here at church and everything. Mm-hmm. And does your sister go here, or
my Bethany, the older sister, does.
Okay.
The older of the 2. Brianne, they go to a church in Westmoreland, yeah.
Okay. And does your other brother?
Jeremy goes to Long Hollow.
Okay, so they're all still involved.
Yep.
And,
yes, definitely. Everybody's still involved.
Yeah. How was the influence of how your parents raised you and making Christ important? How has that affected you and your wife on how you're raising your kids?
Oh, it's everything. My dad, both my dad and my mom, but my dad, as far as being a man, he is the most black and white, straightforward, honest person I've ever seen on this earth. He is a sinner. He has his struggles, I'm sure, just like anybody else. But he was the best example of a man that anybody could have in the way that he loved his wife, in the way that he loved his family, and in the way that he provided for us. That was his number one thing. Christ was first. His wife was second, and his family, and then work and everything else was third. But he worked his tail off to provide for us our whole lives. And he is the best example of who I need to be. When we were walking around the church for VBS, we were praying, and he was right behind me, and he caught up to me, and he told me he was proud of me for what I was doing. And I said, I wouldn't be anybody if it wasn't for you. If you hadn't taught me what you taught me and told me the importance of the things that I'm allowed to do here at church today, and the ministries I'm involved in. So he set that path for me from an early age. And my mom, the same. She nurtured us and took care of us, and anybody that knows my mom knows that she has done childcare basically our whole lives, and so she took care of that side of it. My dad taught us how to be a man, for sure.
And I know people can't see this, but Foster and Justin, there's some manly men. They're just dudes. You look at them like, yeah, that's a guy. That's not like, that's a man. That's what I think God envisions what He wants men to be. And y'all both just give off that when you're seen of being, good, strong Christian men. And the way anytime somebody has a conversation with you, that's going to come out very quickly. Mm-hmm. And in the men's ministry and some of the meetings we've had, we've talked about how that's been lacking in the church, mm-hmm. and we need more strong men in leadership roles that are leading other men to Christ. And it's something I see both y'all doing, and it's what the church needs.
Thank you. I appreciate it. There's a pastor in Jacksonville, Florida that I've watched the podcast a couple of times this week, and he was talking. He's very passionate about men and standing up and acting like men. And he said, if you see him, you would know. But he's jacked, and he's got tattoos, and he's got a big beard, and he hunts. And he said, I've got all these things, and I've got guns, and I kill my own meat and this, that, and the other. And he said, no, but none of that stuff makes me a man. He said, it makes me awesome, but it doesn't make me a man.
I love that. I listened to that yesterday. It was so good. He said, I got more guns than I got fingers and toes, but that just makes me awesome. That doesn't make me a man.
But for my dad, because that's the thing about my dad. He didn't hunt. He wasn't an outdoorsman. He doesn't put off that look, even like you're talking about. He worked in an office our whole life, but he never ever yelled at me. Never. I've never heard him say a cuss word. I mean, I don't want it to sound like I'm putting him on a pedestal that I shouldn't.
Oh, it's okay for you to put your dad on a pedestal.
But I've honestly never seen, myself included, a man do what he's done on earth, and be that good and that focused and that Christ-like in everything he does.
It's funny you say, well, he worked in an office and stuff, he didn't hunt. But I remember growing up and going to a smaller church, and all the men in there, they were men. They didn't give off that image of not being a man of God. Mm-hmm. And then somewhere along the way, the church kind of changed a little bit, or this men changed a little bit. And I feel like we're making a comeback.
Yes, definitely. I think we are, and I love it. I think the church needs it. I think that we need to stand up and be men and be leaders and not be sorry for it at all.
Right. You don't have to be an outdoorsman, a hunter, a fisher, or anything like that, but you can lead in a strong, masculine way.
Yes.
And that honors God, and it's what God wants us to do. You mentioned hunting, and your dad didn't. And I know you're a hunter. How did you get into that? Yeah,
so my uncle, my mom's brother, would be the number one reason that we got into hunting. And he would go hunting. They would leave at Thanksgiving, after our Thanksgiving dinner, and they would hunt until when it was Christmas dinner time to come back. So they'd go to Pulaski and other places for months at a time hunting. They own their own businesses, and so they just structured things where they could get away for 3 or 4 weeks. So both my uncles did that. And then we had a close family friend who actually lived in a rental property that my grandparents owned right there by their house. And he had a huge impact on us hunting. He took us on juvenile and that kind of thing to get us going, took us to get our hunter safety course. And my dad would go hunting with us, but he just didn't, he didn't hunt, didn't teach us. It wasn't his thing. Right. So he would go to spend time with us. He didn't care anything about actually hunting. But those men, and my uncle, I never will forget, we'd sit around the living room at my grandmother's house, and he would just tell us hunting story after hunting story, and we would just be rolling, laughing at his hunting stories. And it just, man, you're talking about a drive. It ignited in me for hunting, and I've never lost it. I love it.
And growing up on the Indian Lake Peninsula, there's a lot of deer. Not necessarily going hunting there, but I mean,
right.
You can walk up. They can walk up and eat out of your hand, basically.
Yes.
And there's some huge ones back there.
There's some big ones back there, for sure.
So being a hunter, what is your favorite animal to hunt?
As far as what I've done so far, whitetail deer is for sure my favorite. I think that elk hunting, I went elk hunting with Jared last year and loved that, and that's kind of my next bucket list thing to do.
That's a lot more work, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot more work for sure, and it's a lot more rewarding. It makes you appreciate what hunting really is, because you got to work a lot harder for it. You can't just go sit out in your backyard in Indian Lake and shoot a big one. You got a glass, and here we go sit in a tree stand for a few hours, and if something comes by, you shoot it. But out there, you're walking miles and miles, and you're walking up mountains and down mountains, and you're glassing from 1,000 yards away, and you're saying, okay, that elk is that far away, but we're going to go down here and go to it, and when you get there, it may or may not be there, and so it's a whole different kind of hunting. But man, out west is just it is an unbelievable passion that I have. It's amazing to see God's creation out there, and anytime I'm out in the woods, no matter where I'm at, here or there. That is just so fulfilling to me, and I could do it forever. I'd never get tired of it, and I'm never ceased to be amazed by God's creation when I'm hunting, no matter where I am. And that's one of the coolest things about it. But here and around here in my everyday hunting, deer is my favorite for sure.
I get you were in Sunday school this past Sunday, and the lesson, it was about looking out and being able to see God's creation.
Yes.
And knowing it's, when you're out hunting, how, this here, and you're driving down the road at sunset time and you see things and the way the colors in the sky are and everything. But when you're out there, especially out west in a different environment, how does that affect you? Like just looking at what's around you.
I truly just am in awe, and I love being that way. I don't ever want to lose my passion and my appreciation for what God has created, and to sit out there and see that. And because every sunset or sunrise that I see when I'm hunting is different, no matter what. It's never the same. And so you see something new every day, and that's just an amazing thing to me. And it gives you time away from all the hustle and bustle. It gives you time away from business. It gives you time away from distractions in life and the phone. And I'm careful to when cell phones became what they are, you can catch yourself sitting there looking at your cell phone instead of hunting or instead of paying attention to that. And so I started wearing a watch for that reason, so that I wouldn't look at my cell phone even to see what time it was, because it can be such a distraction as to why I'm even there. I'm not there to sit on my phone for 3 hours. I'm there to enjoy God's creation for 3 hours and get away from that phone. And so that's something that I try to make sure I do when I'm out there, is just stay focused on, on His creation, on things that I may need to pray about or think about. And then if I kill something, it's a cherry on top.
Yeah.
Foster, have you gone elk hunting yet?
I haven't been elk hunting yet. No, I would love to. I'm waiting for Justin to ask me to come with him.
Yeah.
So what Foster didn't tell you is some of the biggest deer that I've ever killed were on his granddad's land.
Oh, okay.
So Foster let me start hunting with him probably in about 2006 or 7, and for a long time I hunted there, and amazing deer over there. And of course now it's got a neighborhood that's coming through it, and that's just part of life and part of what's going to happen. And we knew one day that would happen, but for the time that we had it, some of my fondest hunting memories are there for sure. And some of the biggest deer that I've ever killed or will ever kill came off that farm. And the first big one I killed, I told you my dad would go with us. We were supposed to go the week before, and something happened where we couldn't go. And that following Sunday afternoon, it was right before Thanksgiving, and he called and he said, "Hey, you want to go hunting since we didn't go last week?" And I was sitting in my recliner watching football, and I was like, "Well, I guess so," And I just thought to myself, I just need to go because he wants to go, whether I kill something or not. He was sitting at the bottom of my ladder stand, drinking coffee and eating cheese crackers and crinkling that package up. And all of a sudden, I see this deer walk out, and I think he scored about 160. I can't remember exactly what it was. Maybe 163, I think. That deer was standing 20 yards from us, and I shot him from that ladder stand. My dad sitting at the bottom, and it was, I'll never forget it. Foster was there.
Yeah.
And your father-in-law was there too, right?
Yeah, he was.
And
it was incredible.
So they came over there, and it was just like the memories that I have from hunting and what God has provided through that are just amazing. It's just, it's life-changing for me.
How old are your kids?
So Jake is 17, Sadie is 11, and Cody is 6.
So are they going with you now?
Sadie and Cody will go me a little bit. Jake, so one of the mistakes I made when Jake was young is I made him go. And that's just learning. I never thought in my life that my children would not want to hunt, or that was even an option for them not to hunt.
Right.
And so when I started taking Jake when he was 6, and I took him whether it was cold or whether it was hot, and we didn't go for 30 minutes or let him come home when he was tired. We went the whole time, and he had to stick it out and go. And so because of that, he really doesn't like it, because it wasn't, at a young age, at a kid's age, he didn't enjoy it like I did, or didn't see it like I did for sure, but I made him do it. So with Sadie and Cody, I've been very careful to not make them do it, but if they say they want to go, you better believe we're going. If they go and they want to leave 30 minutes after we get there, then we leave 30 minminutes after they get there.
That first one is kind of the test where we make some mistakes sometimes with that first one, because, man, I want you to like the things I do.
Yep.
You're my son. I want you to like the same things I do.
Absolutely.
But, like you liked hunting and your dad wasn't into it.
Right.
But when you got into it, he was older, mature, and like, well, I want to be a part of something with my son. So
that's right. And I had to tell myself that yet another example of my dad. That wasn't his thing, and my thing. His things weren't my thing, and my thing wasn't his thing. But he let me be who I needed to be and who I wanted to be. He didn't make me do what his interests were, And so, and I think too, when I was growing up, a lot of my friends hunted. So I wanted to, because they did it, and we'd come to school and tell hunting stories and that kind of thing. And none of Jake's friends really hunt, So they're just Jake's thing is football. He is obsessed with sports and football. Which is fine, good. I love it. I love that he can play. He plays at Liberty Creek, and they've got an amazing facility over there, and I'm glad he can be a part of that. But that's his thing.
What grade will he be in?
He's a senior. He'll be a senior this coming year. Yep. Which blows my mind.
You talked about when you're elk hunting and you're hunting with a rifle. Do you ever bow hunt?
Oh yeah, bow hunting's I've actually killed more bucks with a bow than I have a rifle.
Are you gonna go elk hunting with a bow?
That really just depends on what your tag is. So if I could choose, I would probably choose to, yes, but you kind of just go with what you're drawing or what's available to buy as far as that goes. Because we're actually blessed here to be able to kill the amount of deer a year that we can. We can kill 2 bucks in Tennessee and 3 does a day if you have a sportsman's license. And out there, you have to be drawn to hunt, really, period. I mean, you can buy some over-the-counter tags, but it's not just a free-for-all every day out out west. It's way more managed and serious, and it's managed here well, but it's just different populations and totally different scenarios.
Right. So everybody's been a hunter or anything. We've asked this question. Foster got it. Rayleigh's got it. I can't remember who else. What is your favorite gun? And I'll narrow it down. What is your either favorite long gun, rifle or shotgun?
Well, so I have two favorite rifles. My favorite rifle for hunting would be a 7 mag. I have a Browning X-Bolt right now and love it. My favorite gun for history and tradition is a lever action. Anything lever action. 30-30 would be my favorite for nostalgia and for.
Do you have one that has like the most sentimental value or anything?
I do. So I have a story about 30-30. I got one when I was 16 that my dad bought for me, and then I had that through high school and into college, and like a dummy, I sold it and wanted to get another gun, and of course I didn't have any money then, so I had to sell one gun to be able to get another one, and so I sold that gun and bought a 7 mag, but man, I kick myself every day for that, and so I know who I sold it to, but he won't sell it back to me. And he was a friend. He's a friend in college, and he lives in Jackson, and I'm sure he's going to give it to his kids. And that gun was his first gun, and as important to him as it was to me. But I said after that day that I'd never sell another gun, and I haven't.
I have regretted every gun I've ever sold. It's like, oh, I should have just kept that.
That's the first gun I sold, and I never sold another one. But so my dad ended up getting another one for him when he started going hunting with us, and so I did get that one. So I in my mind, I tell myself that that's the that's the 30-30.
You said it's a lever action 30-30. Is it
yes,
a Marlin?
Marlin, yes.
Okay.
All of them.
So I have a Marlin 30-30. That was my grandfather's. So that gun, and then I have a single shot 22 rifle my dad had as a kid. Those are my two favorite. Yeah. And there's no real value to them. I mean, a Marlin 30-30 is not an expensive gun.
Right, no.
By any means. And a single shot Winchester 22 is not an expensive gun either.
Right.
But those have the most
absolutely that sentimental value. Yeah, means more than anything for sure.
And then it's funny we talk about sentimental value. I was sitting, I'll do security for the pastor sometimes, and I'm glancing over in their Bible, and I see all the notes in them. I'm not a good note taker, right. So are you a note taker in your Bible?
So yes, I am in this Bible. I actually brought this Bible, and we can talk more about this worldview thing here in a minute, but. This Bible is called the Worldview Study Bible, and this Bible was written. Obviously, it's a Christian Standard Bible, but a lot of the study part of it was written by my professors in college, and the president of Union when I was there, and two of his sons. So that's neat to me. In that studying this Bible, I can read some of the dissertations and stuff that they wrote, and it's somebody that I had as a professor in college. So I have 3 of these. I have one, which is this one, that has all of my notes from Brother Bruce's sermons, and I just pray that I never lose this because it has all of that in it, in the sides and things. But I actually have 3 of these Bibles. So I have this one that I use at church. I have one that I keep in my truck, and then I got a backup that if I ever lose either one of those, then I've got it again. But so I love taking notes in my Bible, yes. And this one specifically has all of Bruce's sermons since I've been here with him in it.
And I'm not suggesting this or anything, but have you ever thought, man, this is something with my notes I will be able to give to one of my kids?
Yes.
And they will see what, my thought processes and everything during these sermons.
I think that I would, I definitely will do that and want to do that. I wish I could write the same notes in 3 different Bibles and give the notes to all 3 of them. I have a friend who is going to he has 4 kids, and he's going to buy a Bible and read through each Bible. So he'll read through the Bible 4 times, make notes, and then give his kids that Bible. And I think that'd be a pretty neat thing to do.
That is cool. Well, what else, Justin? I know you've got some things you want to talk about that I'd love to dive into some. You sent me a podcast yesterday that you listened to that was quite incredible, and I know you heard some things there that you wanted to share, so I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so that it was pretty neat that podcast just popped up on my phone. I told Foster I really didn't search that, but it was a pastor in Jacksonville that just, I think it's literally titled "Stand Up and Act Like a Man," and that's a lot of what we talk about here with our men's ministry now. That what we need and who we need to be as men, and so kind of my, I guess you'd say 30,000 foot view of things is what is your worldview, and is that a Christian worldview or is that a worldly worldview? And when I was in college, I had a professor, and it was actually a business class. My major was Christian Ministries and Recreation. My minor was business management. And in one of my business classes, I had a professor that made us write a paper on what is your worldview. And I kind of thought that was weird that he asked us that, because that, to me, that was a Christian thing. And I was at Union, so every class we took had Christianity in it, obviously, but this was a business class, so it wasn't like one of my Bible classes or, ministry classes. And so in that paper, it just made me evaluate, who am I? What do I believe? And in that class, how am I going to use that in business? And how am I going to conduct myself in business? And obviously then I had no idea I'd be where I am in my position of business today, or that I would even be working in our family business. But so that question of what is your worldview was brought forth to me there. And then it's neat that, this Bible was not published until probably 15 years after I got out of college, this kind of Bible. And it was the worldview Bible. And so it's just important to me to know what is your worldview and how are you going to live out, your convictions and that kind of thing. And so, one of the things that I like to think about is, it's kind of cliche, but, that you should live like you're dying. How would you live different if you were living like you were dying? And that can be, from a worldly perspective, that can be, I want to go to, I want to go out west, or I want to travel, or I want to go here or there, or I want to buy this or accomplish this from a worldly standpoint. But then from a heavenly standpoint are you sharing Christ every day, every chance you can get? Are you who God wants you to be, and you letting him use you how he wants to use you? And I think that as men, we need to focus on that. I had a guy ask me this week, how is Israel getting bombed? How does that affect me? And is my 2-year-old going to go to heaven if this is the end times? And so, and those are good questions. But he just wanted to know, and he's a Christian, I know he is, but he just wanted to know how do I know my 2-year-old son's going to? And I said, the Bible says that the Lord's going to provide. Everybody will have an opportunity. We talked about that Sunday. Everybody will have an opportunity to be saved. Charles Spurgeon says, the fear of God is the death of every other fear. Like a mighty lion, it chases all other fears before it. And I think that's a pretty cool statement. When we're talking about fear and talking about, are you scared of the times that we're living in? John 14, 1-3 says, don't let your heart be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms, and if it were not so, would I have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you? If I go away and prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you to myself, so that where I am, you may be also. And so, I just think, we don't have to worry about that. Like, what's going to happen if the end times are coming in? I think they are. Brother Bruce talks about it all the time. I know we're closer now than we were yesterday. And so that's neat to hear him say that. But, things that I think about when I'm thinking about living like you're dying, would you get rid of social media? Would work days important to you? Would we be worried about our daily checklist so much? And, how would your life change? And so we've talked a lot about hunting and me being passionate about hunting. But I want to be passionate about sharing Christ too. And, passion, I think, the definition of passion, this is from Webster, is an intense driving or overmastering feeling or conviction. And so it's an intense desire to do what you're doing, whether it be hunting or sharing Christ. What are you passionate about? And I want to be passionate about sharing Christ, and not just emotional about it. Not just doing it the night after we have a men's event, or not just doing it the day after a good sermon, but day in and day out being passionate about sharing Christ with others. And I think that God's going to put us in the place that we need to be, and the question is, are we going to do what he's called us to do?
Justin, there's a scripture, and you said this a minute ago, looking at worldview from a believer's. Well, if you were dying, live like you're dying, what that looks like from a believer or a non-believer. And 2 Corinthians 5:13 says, this means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone and a new life has begun. I've really been thinking on that a good bit lately. Like, what does that mean that we've become a new person? Like, what about myself is going to represent a new creature, a new creation in Christ? And so I've been thinking a lot about that lately. What you just said, our desires for the things that we do, the things that we're associated with change when we die to ourselves and we start to take up our cross daily. a saying that I heard recently, and I thought was really good. It says, nothing that does not occur daily will ever dominate your life. And I thought, man, there was such a period in my life to where I wasn't in God's word every day. I wasn't crying out to the Lord on a daily basis. And until I started doing that daily, Christ didn't dominate my life. And so I think we all come to this crossroads as a follower of Christ, me and Jeff and you and everybody else, that we have to prioritize the things that we want to dominate our life. And so anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. No,
you're good.
That scripture came to mind when you were talking about live like we're dying. And what does that mean?
Yeah, and Philippians 1:27 says, just one thing, as citizens of heaven, live your life worthy of the gospel. Then, whether I come and see you or am absent, I will hear about you, that you are standing firm in one spirit and one accord, contending together for the faith of the gospel, not being frightened in any way by your opponent. This is a sign of destruction for them, but of your salvation, and this is from God. For it has been granted to you on Christ's behalf, not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for him, since you are engaged in the same struggle that you saw and I had, and now hear that I have. Man, in my daily walk and in my spiritual life, Paul was unbelievable. Like, my favorite verses of the Bible are Paul's journey. Ephesians, Philippians, like, it's just amazing. And it's so applicable to what our life is now. And the things that, we think that we have trouble or that people persecute us, we haven't faced anything compared to what Paul did, and have not had to stand as firm as Paul did, his whole life for sure. And so I think he's just his story. And then any man, I think this is cool too, any man that comes to like a shrimp boil or men's event that we have, no matter how bad they are, you can't be worse than Paul was.
That's right.
You can't do anything worse than Saul did,
Yeah.
And then for God to use him and take him and do what he did with his life, he can do that with anybody's life and where they are.
Yeah.
No matter how bad they think they are or how bad they are.
Yeah.
Or what they've done.
Oh, so good.
Have you been able to use your passion for the outdoors to help you talk about Christ with other men?
Yes, and I'll be honest. I'm glad you said that. It reminded me of a thing. It does give you the opportunity. Creation itself gives you a reason to say, how in the world can you believe there's not a God, or do you believe that there's a God? And if you see this, how can you believe there's not? Haley and I went to Jackson Hole when I turned 40, and we went fly fishing on the Green River. And our guide, it was just Haley and I and that guide in that boat for 6 hours. And he told us a couple of times, you can only have so much small talk before you get into somewhat serious conversation when you're with the same person for 6 hours. And he said that he was Catholic, and he asked me a couple of questions, and I didn't take advantage of that opportunity. And I just kind of went with it and was uncomfortable. I answered his few questions that he had, but I so easily could have used everything around us to witness to him with God's creation, the river we were on, the fish we were catching, the mountains that were beside us, the elk or the mule that was walking, moose that was walking across the front of us, not mule. But I didn't take that opportunity. And so I think about that all the time, that, you've got to take those opportunities to share Christ when he puts you in that position. I've had probably more opportunities through customers at work to share Christ, through deaths in their family, or through just my actions. I had a good friend in college who's a pastor at First Baptist in Jackson, and he was an excellent preacher when we were in college, and still is. But I never will forget one of the things that he said is that the life that you live will be the greatest sermon that some will ever hear or see. And I think that's 100% true. And so I just, I'm just as much a sinner as anybody else, but I want my ministry to be my life and the people that see the life that I live and the things that I do and the things that I say. And I need those people to keep me accountable now, just like I did then, when I was in high school and college. That same podcast was talking about Mark 2 when the 4 men lowered the paralytic through the roof, and to ask Christ to help him and to heal him. And he talks about the faith that those 4 men had, that no matter what it took, they got him to Christ. They led him to Christ so that he could be healed. And they had faith that he would do it. And Mark 2 says, because of your faith, today you are healed. And that Pastor Night podcast calls those 4 guys on each corner of his bed the corner toters. And that's the same thing as the accountability partners, whatever. But you need to have 4 men or 4 or 5 men in your life that will call you out and say, hey, you need to stop doing that. You need to stop talking to your wife like that. You need to change this about what you're doing, because you're the kings and you're an example of him, you know. And those are the things that I was saying my dad did the whole time, my whole life. And so I think that in our men's ministry team, those guys are right there. Like, there's easily 4 guys in there that would tell me that would do that for me. And I've been so blessed to always have those people. And I think for a lot of people, it's hard to find 4 people that'll do that. It's easy to have, you know, just acquaintances and regular friends, but to have 4 people that are close enough to you to call you out and to help you and point you to God, no matter where you are in your spiritual walk, I think is so important.
You also made me think of a Tim McGraw song when you're saying "Live Like You're Dying."
Yeah.
So I feel like it's kind of funny. I started singing it. I started singing it in my head, but then a line of it where he said, "I rode a bull named Fu Manchu." So maybe you rope. Foster and I got to see rope, which you did your part. He was doing team roping, and you were the header. You did your part. Your healer kind of failed you that night.
He called late. We'll forgive him for that, as long as he'll go to another one with me.
That's right.
But, you know, talking about hunting and trying to use that, have you found a chance to use that aspect of your life to talk this? You know, you can, like you said, you can only have so much small talk.
Yes.
And you see some of the same people
right
over and over again. And like I do think it's so important. It's not always what you say, but it's what you do and how you do things that show you're different. You don't ever want to tell somebody, oh, I go to church at First Baptist Hendersonville. Like, oh, you go to church?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I never want somebody to see me anywhere and doubt that I'm who I am and that I'm a Christian and that I follow Christ and that I live one way. I never want someone to think that I live one way at church and one way everywhere else. I want to be the same all the time, and I strive for that. And I fail at that sometimes, just like anybody does. But day in and day out, I strive for that. And when I was at Union, you know, I said I majored in Christian ministries and recreation. I didn't really feel called to be a pastor. Y'all both know, and Wilson knows that I'm terrified of speaking in front of people. There's 2 things that I don't like. And one is speaking in front of people, and the other thing is asking for help. And when you're in ministry, that's all you do is speak in front of people and ask for help.
I was going to ask, when you said your major, were you feeling like you were being called into ministry, or were you going down that road?
So I was going down that path, and I didn't know where that needed to be or what that calling would be. I knew I didn't really want to preach necessarily. I did for a little while think that rodeo ministry might be something that I could do. When I was in college at Union, we went to Wyoming on a mission trip, and so they had what they called go trips, and so you would put, and they had all kinds. You could go all over the country and out of the country on a mission trip. So you put your 3 choices of where you want to go: first choice, second choice, third choice. So I just put Wyoming 3 times to make sure I went to Wyoming, and so I did. And while I was out there, it was again like out west that was the first time I'd been out west, and the first time I'd been on a plane in college, and. But to go out there and see that was just amazing. And we spoke in a church, and I gave my testimony multiple nights in that church. You know, it was funny. One night I stood up and I said something simple like "hello," and the whole place just started laughing. And because I guess they thought I had an accent to them. You know, I had an accent. And I said, "Well, that wasn't even the icebreaker." And then started busting out laughing again. But that was neat to share my testimony there and get to do that. And then while I was there, we got to go to Brandon, and Brandon worked 230 calves and 200 and something mama's cows that day, and that just lit a fire in me. You know, that led. I mean, we showed horses through middle school and high school, and that's kind of what we did instead of sports. But then that led to my desire for rodeo and riding bulls, and then team roping. You know, for sure, riding bulls was just a side thing. It was never. I was not good at it. And it was never. My wife was quick to tell me that she was not going to marry somebody that was riding bulls.
Well, I told you I was a bull faller offer. Ended my rodeo career in high school when I got pretty severely injured. Got injured a couple times, broke my back, then broke my jaw and knocked out a bunch of teeth. So it's like, maybe I don't need to do this anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely not a way to make a living, but God has provided, you know, so many opportunities through horses, and we showed horses in high school and college, and then kind of got away from it a little bit when we went to college and after college. You know, I mean, it's expensive, and Jerry got back into it before anybody else did, and he showed Western Pleasure for a little while, which is totally different than rodeo. It's judged
very
on
slow and
and
boring.
confirmation and boring. And so then I just wanted to get into roping, and a friend in Gallatin was building a roping pen, and I just offered to help him do it. If I wanted to do anything I could to get involved in it. And so I'd help him work on it. And then I went and worked the chute for, 6 months. And then finally one night he said, "Hey, you want to get on a horse and try it?" And so I did. And we've never looked back. Been doing it for 15 years. So, but yeah, but it is. And because that rodeo it's a place where you have all types of mission opportunities. I mean, there's a lot of guys in rodeo and horses that are good Christian guys for sure. Yeah. And there's a lot of guys who don't know the Lord at all. And so that's another opportunity and way to just be a light and let others see Jesus in you. And I've already had opportunities through rodeo to do it, and I'll have more, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's why we have to have that diverse group of men.
Yep.
When we meet together with, the group that Foster's put together, you have a very diverse group in there that can reach
definitely
multiple kind of guys.
Yep.
You can reach somebody that I can't, and I can reach some people that y'all can't. So I think that's so important.
Yeah, Alan Lagarde's in there with us, and he's one of the most unbelievable men as far as service and sacrifice, and another man as far as just leading by example. I've never seen him not serving in this church and not sharing Christ with anybody that he comes into contact to, and so it's neat to have some younger guys like us, and then just a wide array of people who have their wisdom to share with us, and so that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, for sure. Let me ask you this, as one of the questions we had. Why is it important to set the example for other men, and how do you do that? We've been talking about this. You've hit on some of this. Jeff asked you a couple times, have you used your love for hunting to be an example for other men? And you didn't give yourself a lot of credit, and I'm going to give you a little bit more credit. And then he asked you the same thing about rodeo, and I'm going to answer this for Justin, but then I'm going to ask him this question again. Justin chooses not to do some of the things that he could be involved in around those groups of people, because not all the people in those groups of people are Christ followers. So they're doing some worldly things. So I've always noticed Justin, even there was a time in my life where I drank, but Justin wasn't drinking. He was there with me, but he wasn't drinking. And so, Justin has been a huge influence on people, mostly by his actions. And so, anyway, he doesn't give himself enough credit for that. But Justin, why is it important to set example for other men, and how do you do that? I mean, we've talked about it, but I want to hear it again. Yeah.
So since you mentioned alcohol, I'm going to use that. And I'm not saying that alcohol is worse than another sin. Obviously, I know in a lot of the podcasts y'all talked about pornography, and that's definitely a sin that is rampant right now. With iPhones, it's ridiculous how easy it is to get to that. But alcohol has just been something that I've been passionate about not doing in my life, and trying to set an example for other people, whether that be siblings or friends or whoever's watching me. And so I'll just pick on alcohol a little bit, but it's just something that I don't think anything can come good of it in any reason. There's no, you might say that, it's not in the Bible that you can't drink, or, there's a lot of legality to it, and this, that, and the other, but nothing good comes from it. And so, I just chose and had accountability partners in high school and college that we agreed with each other that we're not going to drink. And some of those people do now. Some of the people that were my accountability partners in high school and college do now. And I can ask them and say, well, I've just kind of changed my view on it, and somewhat to save those friendships, I just let that go. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but they know where I stand on it. Now, the extent to what I choose to beat that dead horse with them, I don't know, how far I should take that. But as long as I continue to live by my convictions and continue to be that example, I feel like that's the best thing that I can do. And an example of like this whole deal is, I used to not like coffee at all. Had no desire to drink coffee, but the people around me drank it, and it was a social thing to do. And after you eat dinner, people are like, "Do you want coffee?" And I'm like, "No." And a lot of customers' houses that I go into, "Do you want some coffee?" No. And then finally, I was like, I need to start drinking coffee. And so I didn't even like it at first. I couldn't even get one cup down. And so I drank it. So I drank it until I started liking it. I acquired a taste for coffee, and now I drink coffee every day, and I enjoy it. It's not something that alters my mind or that makes other people stumble, I don't think. But I think that exact same thing can happen with alcohol. And so no matter how good or fun it may be at sometimes, it's bringing you down. It's making you conform. It's setting a bad example. and hurting my witness. And so I don't want to do that. And it can start out innocent, and it can be, no big deal. But then it can, genetically, you can have something that makes you become an alcoholic, and you don't even know, if it's in your past. And the thing that tears me up, about it is that it's conforming, doing what other people do or changing your mindset or whatever is, to me, is conforming to the world. And Foster and I talk about this all the time, is cultural Christianity. And it just, we've made it where it's comfortable to do things that are not right. We've made it where it's comfortable to drink because my Christian friends drink, or my Christian friends do this, and so if your group does it, but it's still Christians, and if your group, does it within that group, and whether it be language or alcohol or whatever it may be, just because your group doesn't call you out on it doesn't mean that it's right, and then once, even worse than that, if it starts with a few beers here and there, then that can turn to liquor, and that can turn to whiskey, and it just, there's no end. Where's the end? And so in my life, that's just the thing, and that I think that's the thing I chose, or I try not to do any sin, obviously, but I'm passionate about that because in roping and in hunting and in all these manly things that we do, it's one of the most common things that people do is drink. And so if I can not drink, and if I can be that light, and I can be that example, and I can be consistent in that, then that's one way that I feel like I can, No,
it's good.
You mentioned cussing also, and, in all three of our lines of work, there's a lot of foul language that can go on, a whole lot. That's something I try to be very conscious of, is how I talk. And,
right.
The words that come out of my mouth. Like if I get up there and I'm in front of a bunch of police officers and I start cussing, and then it's like, oh, I got to go to church. I got to go teach a class at church. Like, what are you talking about? So, I think that's kind of the same thing like you're talking about with drinking, but it's the words that you say. Right.
Absolutely. They need to see, they've got to see Jesus in you. And I'm not always the best about, like Wilson Trout he will share the gospel with anybody, and he'll bring that conversation up. I'm not good about asking every single person, do you know Jesus? Or where do you think you're going to go when you die? Or that kind of thing. But I do try to make the life that I live be that example. And then if someone asks me, or if I have the opportunity to ask them, then I want to do that for sure.
Well, we've heard Pastor Chester say here that the words that come out of our mouth are an indication of what's in our heart too. So, if we are living out the 2 Corinthians 5:17, anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone, and new life has begun. Then the desires for those things, the things that are in our heart, aren't that junk, aren't the cussing and drinking and porn and all the crap. So, anyway.
Yeah, and I think just like that, we talk about studying the Word, and we talked about the difference in reading the Bible and studying the Bible. And because like Travis said in Sunday school the other day, I'm not very good at just reading it because, you have to have purpose or meaning behind reading it. So when you're studying the Bible, it's totally different. And I can 100% say that when I am studying the Bible and when I'm consistent in the Word, that I crave that more. And that's true with whatever you're doing. Yeah. Whatever you're doing, whatever you put your time and effort into, and where your heart is, where your treasure is, it's good. And I don't know why we get lazy and we fall away from that. But anytime that I'm studying, or even when I was reading some verses to get ready to come into here, it's just so good, and it makes you crave it even more. And I think that's true with anything. And so you got to watch what you're doing and spend your time doing, because that's what you're gonna crave, and that's what's gonna come out.
For sure. Have you ever mentored someone? We've heard about some of your mentors with Brady and some other guys, but have you ever mentored someone, and how has that impacted you?
I would say yes. I've mentored people, probably indirectly. I've had a few dads call me and say, "Hey, would you mentor my son?" I haven't necessarily gone with a person on the same night of every week at the same time to say, "Okay, this is our mentorship." But I have, through friendships and mutual friendships and hunting and that kind of thing, taken boys from at the time that they're 10 years old to now they're 21 years old, and I spent a lot of time with them hunting and just showing them that, but then also talking about all these things that we've talked about today, and telling them at a young age, these are the things that you're going to face. These are the things that you're getting ready to experience, and you got to know who you are, and you've got to stand firm in that, and just until I'm blue in the face, just begging them to, just figure out who you are, figure out who your friends are, and who you're going to be, because you're going to face temptation day in and day out, all the way through high school and college. And this is what I tell my boys on Wednesday night, is that, you have to stand firm in who you are and know what your convictions are. And so anyway, you feel sometimes like when you're talking to those boys, that it's talking to a brick wall. But right before we took our summer break on Wednesday nights, I had 3 of them come up to me and ask me, they said, "Hey, where do we start reading the Bible?" And these are 3 boys that are great guys, and I've taught them off and on for years. And for them to come up and ask me that, it's like, they get it, And so I told them, I said, if you want to know who Jesus is, start with John. Let's read all the way through John. Then you need to figure out Paul and what he did. Read through Ephesians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians. I said, because you can use all that stuff. And I said, then read Proverbs. Proverbs, you could read Proverbs every day and not get enough of it. Yeah. And so to share, for them to finally come and ask me, where do I need to start reading the Bible? Because you feel like everything you're saying is just talking to the wind. Yeah. And then for them to come back and ask that, it's like so rewarding, Not that I want a reward out of it, but it's just neat to see.
It's good seeing some of the fruit every so often.
Right.
Just to let you know that, what you're doing is making a difference for sure.
Yeah, having kids, 3 different ages, you're involved with youth here and stuff. You have one that's about to be a senior in high school, and I think you listened to the podcast we did with Hunter Manus, who just graduated from Liberty Creek.
Yes.
What is the biggest issue you see facing the young people? I know Foster loves his porn. I'm sorry, Foster. You love to talk about the problem with porn. You don't love your porn.
That's correct.
But no, because of the issue it causes so many issues. And like when we were talking to Hunter about how it's so hard to avoid, where somebody will pull something up on their phone and just go, "Oh, hey, look at this." Mm-hmm. Do you see that affecting the young people you're dealing with?
Yes, definitely. And I think they are seeing things obviously at such a young age compared to what we saw or what we were exposed to. I mean, they're exposed to more by 7th or 8th grade than I was probably at college or
still
into high school or still. Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. And so yes, I think it's so hard for them to have to deal with those things and have to have convictions. And I think the problem with today is that we don't say that there's absolute truth. Everybody's truth is what you want to make it for you. And so if somebody says that's okay, or some of their parents say that's okay, then they have nothing to base that on. They have no, and so you have parents who are less involved and who are less passionate about sharing Christ or teaching them to be who God wants them to be, because nobody wants to take the time to do it, or they're not passionate about it. And then you have 2 or 4 to 5 times as much temptation. So you have less adult influence and 10 times the temptation. And so they have it way worse than we did growing up, I never saw pornography in a magazine because I didn't go buy it, or I didn't have friends that went and bought it. And if they did, I just left.
And it's so even that it's so different seeing a picture compared to video, seeing actual people doing. And now with all the AI stuff, it's insane what's going on.
I don't even know anything about that. And I don't want to know about it.
Me either.
Yeah, they're seeing you can ask you can have a Chat GPT app and ask it to make a picture into a cartoon.
Right.
And you can use it for good. You can also use it for bad purposes also. Mm-hmm.
I got a saying real quick that I heard. It said, you can't fight the devil in the dark because he is the king of darkness. And you can look at that a bunch of different ways. You can look at that physically dark, like you better. Another Brian Poor used to tell me, you better make your decisions during the day, because once it's nighttime, the temptation is going to be worse.
Even doing police work, one of the stuff we still teach and stuff is evil loves darkness.
Yes.
You have, different crimes and stuff. They occur at night.
Right.
It's different things, and evil loves darkness.
Right.
And there's so much evil in this world.
It can be darkness in your life, in your spiritual life, and in temptation, and it can be physically dark in what you choose to do. Or what they choose to do, with their girlfriends and that kind of thing, as high school and college age kids.
Justin, something I say, this just came to my mind, but I struggle with this as my daughter's 13 and your daughter's not much younger than that, but I'm seeing men in church allow their daughters to wear clothing that is not modest, and I really struggle with that. Some of my good friends, their daughters look like I don't even know the right word to use, so I'm just not going to say a word, but they don't look like modest Christ-following girls.
Sure.
And,
Not
Maddie,
glorifying for sure.
not glorifying for sure. And Maddie kind of gets on to me because I'm like, Maddie, when you're at dance and you're at church and you're wherever you're at, you should represent yourself as if you are a child of the King, because you are a child of the King. And so what is your take, and how do you help Sadie I didn't mean to say her name. How do you help her understand how important it is to be modest as a little girl and a child of the King?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that obviously in the Bible it tells us that we are to love our wife as Christ loved the church. And I think for our daughters, it's kind of the same thing. So if we set that example as to how Christ loves her and show her that, and how we treat her and what we expect her and for her and from her, and I think that if we lead her and help her to know who Christ wants her to be and what is pleasing to the Lord and pleasing to His eyes, then she'll want to do those things. And just again, the importance of standing fast in who she is, that she's a child of God, and that it's like the name of this podcast, The Path. Broad is the gate and wide is the way that leads to destruction, but narrow is the path, and she's got to just be on that narrow path. And luckily, she has not had a desire to dress like that, and she's kind of funny. She's a little bit tomboyish, which I like. That's fine with me.
Me too.
I'm glad that she has that attitude, and I'm glad that she doesn't let people mess with her, and she's pretty blunt, and she'll tell you how she feels, and honestly I think we'll help her. But I think that it falls on us as parents. I mean, we're parents. Our parents that are our age, in my opinion, are so weak.
Yeah.
They don't care. They don't take they just want to do whatever's easy.
Yeah.
And they don't want to take the time to let them know what's important. They don't want to take the time to teach them how to work. Our society is such a luxury, especially here in Hendersonville. Everybody just does what they want to do and gets things easy, and they DoorDash and they Amazon and they, and it's hard to teach these kids to work hard, and the value of work and the value of morals and the value of, and it's just, our generation has taken the easy way out, and we got it. Both men and women, but especially men, have got to stand up and lead and show our children what God expects of us and what we expect of them.
Yeah, for sure. I don't remember the statistics exactly, so I'm not going to try. But I read some information here recently, and I had a couple pastors send it to me, that the percentage of men that are stepping up into leadership roles in their churches and in their homes is on the rise. Mm-hmm. For me personally, the Lord has called me into this position at church as directing men's ministry or men's minister, whatever you want to call it. I don't really care. But my answer to that call in my life was obedient. I wanted to be obedient and answer the call. Mm-hmm. My response was to be obedient and answer the call. I'm seeing men rise up and be obedient to the call in their life as being godly leaders, regardless of their fear of rejection, or maybe their fear of rejection has subsided in a lot of men. But I'd still see men that allow things in their life to take, I think precedence is the right word, over biblical truth, because they are fearful of their peers and what their peers will think of them. I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know what men that are following the Lord, the three of us in this room, I'll talk about us because I know us, but I don't know what it's going to take to help these other guys figure out what it means to walk steadfast with the Lord as king of their life. Do you have any?
Well, I think it's just got to be a priority. It's got to be number one. And I think it's so easy for us in this culture that we live in to just take the easy way out and do what our friends are doing. And a lot of people here are successful, and I think that there are plenty that give that success to God and give glory to God for that. But I think it's just not their priority. I think it has to be number one in your life to lead, to follow Christ, and to glorify Him, and then to teach others to do the same thing. And those men and parents that just take the easy way out, it's just not good for them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Someone will touch on you've talked a lot about your mom and dad and how they raised you, and you talked a little bit about your wife and how it was similar. for you and her, is it ever a conscious thought? Well, I'll talk about for you and you can speak for her if you want to, but that you're setting an example for your son on how a husband should treat a wife, and for your daughters on how they should treat I guess your wife is setting an example for them, but also on what they should expect for a husband. Is that something y'all think of?
For sure it is. And that's something, I haven't had struggles with pornography or alcohol or things like that, but that's something that I need to work on area in my life is to, I don't treat her bad by any means. Haley does a lot at our house. And so, it's easy for me to serve outside the home. And so I can go cook, and I can go to men's ministry events, and I can do security, and I can do Wednesday nights, and I can do all those things. I can be gone, go. But I got to remember that they need some time too. Right. And so for me to spend that time at home is important. And that's something that I have to work on, because I do so many different things outside the home. And Haley is so good to take care of things at home while I'm doing all these other things. But as far as Haley and I together, it's easy for me to love Haley, and it's easy for me to show her and treat her well and not raise my voice at her. It's not so easy for me not to raise my voice at Jake, or because things he does. I mean,
it's really hard with that oldest son.
That's right. He's the first one. I have a lot of expectations for him, and I know the areas that I would like to change, things that I did in my life. So I try to keep him from doing those things, and whether it makes sense to him or not, I hound him, and just even here recently, honestly, I've kind of just let up a little bit, just because I don't want it constant to be like, well, Dad just yelled at me all the time. Because like I said, my dad never yelled at me, never raised his voice at me. But my mom did some, and she was more the disciplinary in our house. But I think that I appreciate that discipline now. I didn't then, but I appreciate it now. And so I think that Haley and I can do good loving each other and showing our kids that. The thing that I always have to remind myself of and be careful of is how my kids see my actions, my reactions to them. And that's if I've got somewhere I need to work, that's where because it's easy for me to want to just talk at them instead of talk to them or listen to them. And so that's an area of my life that I try to work on. And Haley, it's funny, for her Mother's Day card, I gave a card and it said, "Honey, I want you to just relax today, and you sit on the couch and do what you want to do." And then you open it up and it says, "Now tell me what to do and how to do it." Yeah. and that's the truth, because she just does everything. She's the most selfless person I've ever met in my life, and she I go and do a lot. I go and do a lot of fun, and I have a lot of fun, and I think that's important. I think you need to have hobbies and interests, things that you can be passionate about to be well-rounded. But I think that you got to remember what's at home too, and you got to make sure you take care of that.
And saying that, and for anybody, it doesn't mean that we're not going to have an argument with our spouse at times. At all. Yeah. But it's important, if we do have an argument, for our kids to see us come back together.
Yes.
That it doesn't mean, we had an argument and everything's done. No, we still love each other. We just had a disagreement.
Yeah, I never want to be at a point or to even argue to a point where my kids say, "Are y'all going to get divorced?" or something like that. I don't want that to ever be. If it gets to the point they have to ask that, then I've done something wrong. But you are going to argue. You can't be married.
That makes me think of a funny. So I have 2 young kids, and my wife Jamie is allergic to every animal on the face of the earth, and they want pets. And they wanted me to get a separate house from her so we could have a pet house. They don't this was like 3 years ago probably, and they're 8 and 6 now, so even younger than. But they wanted me to get a separate house so we could have a pet house, and then our regular houses so they could have pets. But I always thought that was funny for them to say that.
That is funny. Well, Justin, before we wrap up, unless you have anything else, do you have anything else you want to hit on before we wrap it up?
No, just passion. I want to be passionate about sharing Christ. I want to be passionate about my lifestyle and my life, and I want others to see Christ in me, and then I want other men to do the same thing. Passion creates action, and we got to be passionate. As men's ministry, we talk about that all the time, and about doing it, not just talking about it, but doing it. And so that's what I hope that we do, and we encourage us to do in the men in this church.
Yeah, sure. Well, as an encouragement to you, you have a lot of influence on people because of who you are, because of the man you've chosen to be. And so feel encouraged that you're making a difference in some men's lives just by the way that you act. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I've enjoyed this so much, just getting to know you better and hearing stuff about your life and everything. And I hope the people, it's not this men that listen to this, but that the people listen to this know that there are godly men in this world that they can go and find and seek that advice from.
Yeah.
That being said, if anybody has any questions that they want to hear answered on this podcast or hear us discuss, or a topic they would like to hear us talk about, Foster will give his email address. Please email us, let us know, because we want to give you what you need. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, email address is fcarney@fbchtn.org. And before we close, I do want to ask you one more thing. If you had a go-to Bible verse for your life in this season that you're in, what would that go-to Bible verse be? Yeah, there's a bunch that I love, but two that I like, or two passages that I like specifically. One is Ephesians 3:17-21. It says, "I pray that you, being rooted and firmly established in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the length and width, height and depth of God's love, and to know Christ's love that surpasses knowledge, so that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do above and beyond all that we could ask or think, according to the power that works in us, to him be the glory in church and in Christ Jesus to all generations forever. Amen." And when I say that, I've kind of had an easy life, the cool thing about my life is I don't have like a drug story, or I came back from this or came back from that. But the fun thing about it is like it always gets better. Like it's every thing that I've done growing up, and you have trials and tribulations, and I'm not saying that my life's been perfect at all, but it's just been neat to see God's plan and to see it unfold and to see why things that happened 10 years ago happened for now, and just with jobs and different things that come. And so that's why I like that verse, because he has blessed me beyond anything that I ever imagined. And it's fun because I see where my life has come and where it is, and I can't imagine where it's going to go if the things that I've been exposed to and the opportunities that I've had have been as good as they are. It's just neat to see how it'll go. And the cool thing about that is that's not even why we're here. It doesn't matter why we're here. Life is short here. We're worried about the kingdom. We're worried about what's coming. And so the second one is 1 Thessalonians 4:11. It says, "Seek to lead a quiet life, to mind your own business, and to work with your hands, as we commanded you, so that you may behave properly in the presence of outsiders and not be dependent on anyone." So those are just two of a bunch that I like, obviously, but those two are pretty neat for me right now. That 1 Thessalonians 4:11, that's my dad's go-to verse, and so that's really cool. Well, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your leadership with the men in this church, but far beyond this church, you're exposed to a lot of people through Crain Company and just being a local guy here. So, man, just keep up the good work, and thank you for all you do for our church. And well, let me close us in prayer, and we'll call it good. Thank you. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for today. Thank you for the testimony that you have allowed us to hear through the life that Justin Crain has experienced so far, Lord. I'm encouraged by him, and I pray that other men and maybe even some women and kids will be encouraged by Justin's story. I hear guys say that, I don't have much of a testimony. I don't have a drug story, but what we see in Justin is the Lord has kept him protected through all walks of his life and given him exactly what he needed when he needed it to stand firm in his faith, starting with the foundation that his mom and dad laid for the first 8 years of school. And so, God, I'm just grateful for that. I find so much encouragement in that. And God, I pray protection over us as we leave here tonight. And I pray that you will give us the boldness and the courage and just equip us with what we need to continue to take you to all the lost people around us, Lord. We love you. We trust you. And thank you for all you do. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Path, a podcast production of the men's ministry of First Baptist Church in Hendersonville, Tennessee. For more information, or if you have questions, please visit our website at FBCHville.com. That's FBCHville.com.